So we got an air purifier going as well. If you need Wi-Fi, it's right there. Let me introduce Chief Ray Benitez from he's an Assistant District Attorney in charge of the Vehicular Homicide Bureau. Captain Mike Dezane, he's in charge of our Criminal Investigation Division. I'll speak briefly, give a synopsis of what happened last week, and then I'll turn it over to Captain Dezane, and then Chief Benitez, and then we'll take some questions. I understand there's a lot of concern in the community relating to the crash last Wednesday afternoon. For those who are not aware, Highland Avenue in that area is a very walkable neighborhood. There are a lot of people that also run up there, a lot of running enthusiasts go into that neighborhood. Council Rock Primary School is literally a couple blocks south of that location. I first want to reassure the community by stating this was not a traffic safety issue, but rather an intentional act by an individual perpetrator. The operator of the car, whom we arrested, sped down Highland Avenue in a westerly direction at about 60 miles an hour and intentionally struck the victim. We were very fortunate that several witnesses came forward to provide us crucial information in this case. I've always said that law enforcement can't do this alone. It's the police and the community to get together as partners that were able to solve this crime. The person who was struck and killed has been positively identified as Omar Coker. He was 34 years of age, and his last known address was at 1477 East Main Street in the city of Rochester. There was a minor issue about his middle name, which prolonged the positive identification by the Monroe County Medical Examiner's Office. As a police department, we need to make sure that we announce in the name of a decedent that we are correct when notifying the next of kin. So that's what took a little bit of time. Yesterday afternoon, we arrested Angela D. Griffin, age 24 years old. Her last known address was 478 Maplewood Avenue in the city of Rochester. She was charged with murder in the second degree, a Class A1 felony. She surrendered here at the police department shortly after 5 p.m., represented by her attorney, Mr. James Napier. Ms. Griffin was arraigned by Brighton Town Justice Karen Morris and remanded to the Monroe County Jail without bail due to her being a 3-time convicted felon. She's also been on parole for less than a year after a 2016 conviction for attempted robbery in the first degree out of Richmond County, New York. I want to take a minute just to personally thank Chief Benitez from the District Attorney's Office. He was with us right from the start of this investigation all the way up to where we are today. I also want to thank United States Marshal Charles Salina. He activated his Fugitives Task Force group on Saturday, and they were actively out in the community looking for Miss Griffin before she turned herself in. We were also assisted by the Rochester Police Department, who helped during search warrants, along with their major crime unit, who provided valuable assistance into the investigation. The New York State Police Collision Reconstruction Unit also assisted us with the vehicle aspect of the investigation. New York State Parole was here with us, stood by us while we were out looking for Miss Griffin, and the Monroe Crime Analysis Center, who worked late into the night providing us valuable intelligence. I'll turn it over to Captain Mike Dezane, who's in charge of our investigative division, who can provide more details into what we have.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning. In case you don't know, this incident occurred on February 10th, approximately 2:47 p.m., the intersection of Highland Avenue and Council Rock Avenue in our town. We received multiple 911 calls for a pedestrian struck at that time. Upon our arrival, it was determined that our pedestrian was deceased at the scene, and we had basically a hit-and-run motor vehicle accident at that point. We had multiple witnesses providing us additional details that led us to a vehicle involved on East Main Street in the city of Rochester. That vehicle was found within 50 minutes of the actual accident, which occurred at Highland and Council Rock. We worked late into the night. I will tell you, our investigators worked over 20 straight hours to come to a successful conclusion at that point, locating the vehicle and piecing together the investigation. As the Chief mentioned, the arrest took place yesterday, 5:15 p.m. Angelina Griffin was charged with murder in the second degree. Our investigative staff, who a lot of them are here in the room, I can't say enough about the way they worked together as a team, along with Chief Benitez, who stood by our side throughout the whole investigation. Just to give you an idea of the extent of this investigation, we have over 450 hours invested. We have conducted 3 search warrants in the town of Brighton at residences and 2 in the city of Rochester. As Chief mentioned, our suspect in custody, Angelina Griffin, is currently on parole. She has a robbery conviction out of Richmond County, dated March of 17. She was convicted of attempted robbery in the first degree. At that time, she was sentenced to 42 months at the Albion Correctional Facility. She was released in April of 2020. Anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah, what is this an intentional act? When people may hear that, they'll think she's using her car as an instruction. What makes
Sure.
this intentional?
Our investigation at this point leads towards basically a retribution for a robbery that may have taken place just prior to the actual incident that occurred at Highland and Council Rock.
Who stole from who?
The investigation right now suggests that our decedent somehow arrived at these apartments at the corner of East and Highland, known as the Country Club Apartments. There, an interaction took place with who we believe to be Angelina Griffin. A brief interaction took place, which at this point suggests a robbery. Our decedent left the scene walking or running down Highland Avenue, and our suspect, our defendant in this case, Angelina, left that apartment complex in a Mercedes-Benz, a high rate of speed, as the chief mentioned, and struck our decedent while he was walking on the shoulder of Highland Avenue. At that time, upon our arrival, several $1,000s was spread across Highland Avenue. Our decedent was in possession of a weapon at that point, and we had heard direct statements from witnesses that led us to believe a robbery may have just occurred. That portion of the investigation is active at this time, but it's safe to say at this point some type of robbery occurred.
Was the decedent the victim of that robbery?
We believe so, yes.
Did the two know each other prior to the robbery? How did that transpire?
We're still investigating that. I can't give you an answer at that right now.
Let me clarify just one point. You asked if the decedent was the victim of the robbery. We don't believe he was the victim of the robbery. It was
Explain it a little better. I'm not getting it.
what we believe is that Ms. Griffin struck Mr. Coker with the vehicle as retribution for a robbery. We believe that Mr. Coker robbed Ms. Griffin.
Was this a drug situation?
It's too early to tell. Obviously, there were some large sums of money involved. It's still ongoing. Just because we made an arrest, we need to track back exactly where these people were prior to the incident, how long these people may have lived where they were living. So that part of the investigation is still ongoing.
You mentioned she turned herself in, but it sounds like you were hot pretty much on her trail when she did. Can you explain how that all went down?
Sure. So Friday night, we identified her as a potential suspect. She has ties to New York City. The captain contacted the United States Marshal Service and their fugitive task force, and they came here Friday night, and they were beginning to ramp up their investigation into this and to begin tracking her down. So I'm glad that she turned herself in. There's always that safety issue. When you put out a wanted bulletin for somebody for murder in the second degree that goes out statewide, it obviously heightens the level of law enforcement if they were to have contact with her. We spoke to Mr. Napier, and he assured us he was going to try and have her turn herself in, and he did that.
What about the warrants? What can you say about those?
The search warrants, the captain can answer that.
We conducted 3 search warrants in the town of Brighton at the apartment complex at East and Highland. We conducted 2 search warrants in the city of Rochester, East Main Street, and the other location was Maplewood Avenue. And then we conducted a search warrant on the vehicle involved, this Mercedes-Benz.
Can you talk about what you were able to find?
I don't want to give out details to what was discovered at the search warrant locations right now. Same goes for the Mercedes-Benz. We have the Mercedes-Benz. We're still conducting investigative leads into that. So at this time, I'd rather not talk about what evidence was found at the scenes.
The woman who was charged, does she live in our community now?
It appears as though she had an address on East Avenue.
Because I know for parole, they do have to register where they're staying.
So as you know, the Chiefs Association here in Monroe County has been very vocal sometimes about parole and parolees living in our community. And this is certainly not to cast a bad light on the men and women who work in the parole system every day, the boots on the ground, if you will. We believe that Ms. Griffin was using that East Avenue address in the Country Club Apartments, and this is my term, a ghost address. Parole had no idea that she was living there. And I know there's a lot of talk in the community about loosening some of the restrictions of paroles. And it's this type of conduct when parole officers don't know where their parolees are living and they can't monitor what they're doing. It only further leads them down the path of criminal conduct. And maybe if there were some more stringent requirements in place of parole and parole officers were allowed to do their jobs, maybe this wouldn't have happened. If we would have known, if parole may have known that she was living there, they could have done home visits. That's the whole purpose of home visits, to see what they're doing and where they're living, so they don't reoffend.
Where did parole think she was living? I know you can't get in their minds, but did you develop any information that the address where she said she was living and how it was different?
She had a parole address, I believe, if I'm correct, out of Bronx.
Staten Island?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's where they thought she was living. That's where they, yeah. She had transferred her parole from the Bronx up to here, or from Richmond County, I should say.
Just a more generic sort of question. You're very familiar with that neighborhood and the traffic in that area. If she was in fact doing all the things that's alleged to have happened with the speed in that vehicle, I mean, how dangerous of a situation was that at that time of day?
Well, it was in the afternoon. I got concerned when I was notified of it. Like I said, Council Rock Primary School is literally 2 blocks south of that location. I thought, God forbid, a child had been struck. Like I said, there's a lot of runners up on Highland Avenue. It's a very walkable neighborhood. But when you have a parolee chasing down a person in a vehicle going, the best estimate we have right now as I stand here, 60 miles an hour down Highland Avenue, striking that person, that's pretty dangerous. Do you have anything else for me? Well, anything for the district attorney's office?
Can you explain
Right.
how the second-degree murder charge applies here? Second-degree intentional murder, if I could get you at a later date.
As the chief and Captain Desane have already indicated, there's evidence, and this is by eyewitness accounts, that this individual was traveling at a high rate of speed, approximately 60 miles per hour, as the chief said, and it appeared, this is based again on eyewitness accounts, that the vehicle went directly at this pedestrian, and at the scene, there's additional evidence that was obtained through eyewitness account that this person made some statements indicating that there was that she was recently robbed by an individual at gunpoint. The individual who was found at the scene ended up having what appeared to be a gun on his person, and there appeared to be a large amount of money strewn about the crash scene. Now, with that said, I want to bounce back to what Captain Desane and the chief said earlier. This investigation and the results of this would have never been possible without the help of the community, eyewitnesses out there that are part of this community, that care about this community, the patrol office, starting from the patrol officers here at this unit with the Brighton Police Department, through the sergeants, investigators, and ultimately with the investigators involved in this unit. You know, especially Investigator Michael Desane, Investigator Stephen Hunt, and Investigator Renee Fisher. Just to mention a few, I know I'm leaving some out, but it was their tenacity and along with the tenacity of the regular patrol officers that were able to develop leads to get to a point, to get to the car that was involved, and from there establish additional points of contact that led to the ultimate identification of the suspect. But with that said, I don't think there's anything more that I can say without compromising the case in some manner or another.
You talked all of you about eyewitnesses. Do you have video? I know everybody's got Ring cameras now and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything that visually points to what happened?
We do have video surveillance from the area, and it kind of pointed us in the right direction. I'm not going to go into details of exactly what that shows, but we do have video evidence. We have a lot of evidence, quite frankly. We collected numerous pieces of evidence. As the captain indicated with the search warrants that were conducted, we're still processing evidence as we speak today. Because everything that we collected has to be processed for fingerprints, any type of forensic identification that we can get off of it. So it's still ongoing.
So is this headed to the grand jury now?
And eventually, yes.
And is there another court appearance set?
I believe that the next court appearance is Friday at 3:30 for a preliminary hearing.
That's here?
Yes.
And what about bail status?
There's no bail on an A1 felony, and she's also a predicate felon. Double predicate felon.
Anything else? Are we all good?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
Drive careful.